Hey guys, Mike Francis here. It's a nice sunny, what month we in? March day. It's a little cool out, nice little, I think around 60 degrees, but beautiful out. So, some of you may know me, some of you may not. Again, my name is Mike Francis. I decided that during my 2.5 hour commute home or into work, instead of listening to the same podcast over again or shitty radio, I would talk and vent a little bit and go over some topics that I know of. And basically, the only thing I know of is the elevator industry, because that's what I'm a part of. So, the topic today that I want to jump into seems to be brought up all the time. It's when an elevator guy meets another elevator guy or whatever, it's always a topic of gossip or conversation, because it's on the forefront in the face, especially in the New York, New Jersey marketplace of our industry right now. And the topic is basically the mergers and acquisitions, the buying and selling of all these elevator companies. So many of them have been bought and sold lately that the face of our industry is changing. Is it changing for the better? Is it changing for the worse? I don't know. But I'll give my thoughts and opinions on it, go over a couple details, and I'll review your comments below. Please leave your comments below. I'll do a secondary video going over them, reviewing the comments and questions and trying to answer whatever and bringing up those stuff to talk about. I invite other people. Maybe we'll do a call-in or whatever. I don't know. Just trying to kill time on my commute, talking about what I know. Elevators. So, I guess let's back up. The buying and selling of elevator companies isn't a new thing. It's really been around from day one, from when the first couple of elevator companies were started. You had your Otis, you had your Westinghouse, you had a whole bunch of other ones that are escaping my mind right now. But even more than that, on the more rural areas, you had machine shops. So you'll see a lot of companies, elevator companies, established in 1908 or 1907. I actually think Slade was like 1908. But it wasn't an elevator company in what you would visualize today. It was really a machine shop, because a lot of stuff, it was highly machined stuff, and that's how a lot of these small companies started. Slade Elevator started as a machine shop, Old Man Slade. But anyway, so it wasn't uncommon from the beginning that an elevator company, would pick up a smaller company to boost up their units, to boost up their footprint in that area, or for whatever reasons, to absorb the talent, to absorb the machine shop, to absorb the production line, whatever. So, that being there, I'm just going to fast forward to like my era, my generation, or my exposure into the industry and what was happening at that time. So let's fast forward or back up to like 1996 to the year 2000. There were some notable acquisitions back then that I want to speak of. So after the strikes in 96, in between 2000, around 2000, I want to say, Flint Hill Elevator was one of the largest independently owned elevator companies in the New York City area. They had a lot of cars underneath service. They had a lot of Local 3 union workforce working for them, employed by them, and they were sold to Montgomery Kone, who also owned Armour. And I actually believe, if my memory isn't wrong, it probably is wrong, but I believe like the first couple of months that Kone acquired Flint Hill, the name was really Montgomery Kone Hill, or something along those lines. You guys that were part of it know better, please throw a comment on the bottom. But I really think they kept all three names in some aspect of it. Then fast forward, eventually the Hill came off right away, and eventually Montgomery came right off the way. But I can even remember the Flint Hill logo with the lines like Kone has on the bottom. They were red. when it was Montgomery, then it was Blue, when it was Cone A, or the mixture of the two. And, leave comments below, you guys that know more details of it or how that worked out. It's pretty interesting to revisit that. Anyway, so that was one company that was purchased. Another notable one was the big acquisition of the New York Elevator, Manco Elevator, Century Elevator. Now, New York Elevator was another powerhouse. I don't know if they were as big as Flint Hill, but I know that they were equal in value, meaning maybe Flint Hill had more units in service in the 5 boroughs, but the cars that New York Elevator had in service were diamond level contracts. They had the Empire State Building, they had, the Chrysler Building, the New York Hotel. I mean, all the notable stuff or any accounts in Manhattan at the time, they had. So they were another independent company bought with a bunch of other ones. Manco Minuteman, a very, very popular company, had a great Minuteman logo on the side of the van. Very, very cool stuff that you don't see anymore. They were acquired as well, another good company. And those companies were absorbed into ThyssenKrupp, another IUEC company. Now, the same thing that happened with Flint Hill, with them, when when those acquisitions were happening, it was an elevator company buying an elevator company. An elevator business that knows the business buying another elevator company that knows the business. So that was the positive side of things. Everyone knew what was what. They knew how to run it. They knew all those great things because that's what their business was. And the elevator business, don't fool yourself, is a very unique business. I get it. A salesman from Pepsi that sells Pepsi can go over and sell KFC chicken. It's not necessarily true in the elevator market. I don't know what's different about it. It's just a very unique, specialized marketplace. So, when those acquisitions were happening, like I said, it was different because an elevator company is buying an elevator company. But on the other side of the fence, it was, for lack of a better word, it was cold or more business oriented. You remember, it's a business at the end of the day trying to make money and develop their business. And I apologize for the bouncing up and down the camera, but look, I'm not a professional studio. I'm not doing this professionally. I'm just doing it to kill my ride home, so I apologize for that. But anyway, what I mean by cold or business being business, meaning the game plan was, all right, let's buy Joe Elevator. Joe Elevator has 500 cars on service. Out of those 500 cars, how many accounts are paying? How many accounts are past 90 days? Who's not paying? Who's not a good payer? Who are we not making money on? Who are we losing money on having them on service? Are we charging them $9 a month, but yet it's costing our guy, an hour a month to do maintenance at $250? Let's dump those contracts. Right away, they dump all the garbage contracts, keep the good ones. Next level, to look at the workforce in the fields. All right, how many routes do we have? All right, well, over at our company, our guys were short 25 on that route, 30 around that route, and they'd fill in those routes first with the talent that they had at their existing company. They would go down to, all right, let's evaluate the manpower. Let's do a rack and stack of all the manpower in the fields. Rack and stack is basically evaluating all the guys, their weaknesses, the coming in late, their knowledge and all that stuff like that. And based on that chart, they'll develop a plan to let them go or bring them to the next level. Or if they're really talented and they're, in a lower level, maybe they move them up. So that was that. Maybe 50% of those guys would continue on underneath the new company name. And then you go to the operations. Well, the company that was coming in, whether it's Thyssen, Otis, Schill, whoever, they have a good operations. Or maybe not better than the one that's existing, but they're existing. They're the ones that bought it. They don't need another person to do payroll. They don't need another person to dispatch. So right away, they might keep 1 or 2 people, but the rest of the operational staff wiped out, gone. And that's how they do business. That's the cold aspect of it, where when those companies were announced that they were bought, you knew in 90 days a lot of those guys weren't going to be continuing to work for that company. It was a scary thing. that also kind of deterred a lot of independent companies at that time from selling to OEMs. You gotta remember, two factors, let's go back 20 years ago, that were different, where the value of the companies were lower, number two, and you know, the second thing really is, if a guy had a company that developed over 20 years, he had relations with the people that went there, he didn't want to see his company just get chewed apart, name destroyed, and basically everything he worked for thrown out the window, and all the employees that were loyal to him and helped him build this company, get where he got to get, were all let go and fired. So it didn't stop people from selling, but it kind of deterred it, where they weren't just rushing down the line to sign the paperwork. But back to the first thing, the value of the company was lower than it is today. So let's just say I wanted to buy Bob Elevator. Bob Elevator is a 500 unit car company. They have 500 cars on service, whatever. So when I went to go buy Bob 20 years ago, I wasn't looking at his profit and loss statement. I wasn't looking at his WIP report. I wasn't looking at anything. The only thing I knew was he has 500 cars on service. It could have went one or two ways. The first way is, you got 500 cars, I'm going to offer you $500,000. And we'll negotiate between $500,000 and $1 million for your company and call it a day. The second part was, all right, how much money are you bringing in a year on your 500 cars for maintenance? Whatever that service money is, we'll give you for a year, which would still be, in the $1 million mark, but nothing crazy. Nowadays, the values of companies are 3 or 4 or 5 times of what they should be. But I digress. So that was not really lighting the fire for people to sell their companies, because what are you going to do with $1 million? It's not like you're retiring off of that and living the next 20 years of life happily. Some people had to do it. Some people were in a position where that wasn't enough for them. So that was that. Those acquisitions back then. Let's fast forward to what's going on today. So you fast forward to about 10 years ago. Let's say, I don't know, let's use 2010. I don't know the exact year. Time's a little blurry for me right now, but we'll say 2010. 2 important articles came out around that time. The first article was kind of common, and the elevator guys knew about it. It was pretty just complimentary to the elevator workforce, so to speak. And that article helped what's happening today, but it wasn't the nudge like the second article. So the first article is basically saying that elevator technicians, elevator construction workers, elevator people in general, they make more than any other blue-collar worker around. They're the top paid industry. It's one of the toughest industries to get into, but they're the top payers. And really, if you work your way up the ladder, the corporate ladder, and you excel, at a point you could be making more money, or the same amount of money as a lawyer or a doctor makes, if you got up that high on that ladder. And yeah, that article is true. But the flip side of things is, it's also one of the most dangerous industries to get into, and it's also the most involved skills to get into. You got to know, and everyone spoke about this before. It's not the nature of this conversation, but you got to know plumbing, electrical work, carpentry, everything. You got to be a jack of all trades, and it's very, very skilled. So that article came out, and it helped things. Everyone's like, oh wow, what's going on? And the light was shined on another article from a financial analysis, basically saying one of the hidden industries is the elevator industry, and on average, an elevator company, elevator service company, would generate about 18 to 20% profit a year. So once that number came out, the 18%, elevator companies are working on 18% profit margin, things exploded. Every bank, every financial resource, anyone that had money in their pocket, investment firms, all saw that article and were intrigued. Really? 18% profit, that's great. Yeah, I mean, am I going to put my $1 million into a savings account and get barely any interest, or am I going to put it into an elevator company, develop it, and sit back and collect my 18% profit every year? It was a no-brainer. The problem with that is it's not exactly true. It's not exactly false. It's not exactly true. From my knowledge in working in this industry, a very, very good run union elevator company in the New York City, New Jersey market, and I'm talking even Boston, even Florida, even the whole East Coast, as far as I know, from what I've experienced and what I've seen, a good run company will work at a 10% profit margin. And that's a couple years in the industry. They got their stuff going, they're flowing, they know how to keep up with billing, they know how to keep up collections. It's a very, very hard target to achieve, but I have seen it, and that's usually what they run about, the 10% profit margin. A good company, like I said, that still needs to fix some of the organizational stuff, kind of more of the average, that's been around for a couple of years as well, that's another key point, will be around 8%. Still very good. You know, other companies that are new or made a couple investment decisions or have a high overhead, again, right now I'm just speaking just for the union shops, we'll be at 5%, which is still, you know, good, but not as good as everyone expects. So that's the normal range for good running elevator companies. Like I said, 10, that's probably the average. A newer company or a company that made a couple of bad decisions, 5 or less, but still, it's a profitable industry. On the other side of the fence, non-union shops, they can make anywhere between 12 and 15% profit margin. Now, that's also a double-edged sword. Yeah, all right, a non-union shop can make that money, but guess what? A non-union shop has a plateau or a level that they can never break. There's a barrier level where they can never go past. So you're never going to see a non-union independent elevator company unless it's backed by a financial group, you know, like Oracle. They're non-union down in Florida. They're massive, but you're never going to see an independent non-union shop break that plateau of 1,000 units. It's not going to happen. Why isn't it going to happen? Well, it's pretty obvious. If you have a talented elevator mechanic that's taking care of your cars, why is he going to stay and work for a non-union shop if he has talent when he can go to a union shop and get paid what he deserves? You got to remember, it's a very dangerous, skilled industry that we're in, and guys deserve to get paid a fair wage from the union. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, it's just facts. So why would anyone in their right mind take a $30 paycheck when they can, you know, essentially take home a $100 package working for a union? It makes no sense. So you hit a level of how many cars you can have on service and maintain properly with the non-union workforce. A lot of companies have tried, and a lot of times when you're starting out, you need to be non-union because you can't afford all the overhead. I know several good companies. D&D was a non-union shop that sticks out in my head. Very, very good company, well run. I do not believe they made past 1,000 units, but he was doing other things that helped fill up that gap between the union workforce and non-union workforce, and that's really education. So D&D focuses a lot on their elevator learning center and teaching their guys the industry. Now, yes, that's great for the industry. No, it's not great for the men in the future. And I'm sorry, I like D&D. It's a great company, but they should have been a union company, bottom line. But they fill up that gap with education. And so did Richmond Elevator in the beginning. So in the beginning, Richmond Elevator was doing the same thing. They were doing night courses that they taught their guys what to do in the shop at night. And eventually, Richmond Elevator became a local 3 shop, just like Brooklyn Elevator. So at a certain point, they realized that they need to go to the next level. The men deserve it, and you know, the customers deserve the talented workforce as well. So it's a no-brainer. But the reason why those companies were working at 15%, it's very, very clear. their overhead was less, and that's why their profit margin was higher. So that's really where we're at with those type where that. So the article came out, and you got all these financial people involved, and like I said, that's the truth of what it is. So in any event, if you're still working at a 10% profit margin, still pretty good. It's not as great as 18% or 20%, which the financial people are trying to push for, but it's decent. Now, that happened, and a couple of investment firms popped up. Actually, more than a couple, maybe like half a dozen. And they started testing this theory of slowly buying a company and another company, and certain financial institutions or investment firms would see, all right, this is working this way or this is working that way, and what sprang from it really right now are about 3 major players in the market that between these 3, even 4 players have bought in the last 5 years, merged with 80 to 100 companies just in the New York City market. And a lot of these companies, other companies born in Philadelphia, Florida is another big region, Texas. So let me go into some of these companies and some of these acquisitions and what makes it different from the old OEM approach to their approach. So right now, the big, as far as being backed by private equity, you have 3-phase elevator out of Boston and Excel elevator down here. I forget who the private equity company is that currently owns them, because the last private equity company bought them and did a deal and bought Eagle Elevator and Brandywine Elevator and a few other ones. And that company, I think last year, sold them to another private equity company. So anyway, you have this institution, let's call them the Excel 3-phase faction, and they're buying up all IUC companies, local 1 companies for the New York area, but International Union of Construction, elevator construction workers, union-based shops all up and down the Northeast coast. So they're one powerhouse doing that, and that's the one faction. And with them, their approach is they kept the main 2 names, and anything else is being absorbed over to those names. So they kept the 3-phase name for the Boston market, because Boston was familiar with that, and in the lower New York, New Jersey, Philly, Connecticut area, Excel was known for their escalators, so they kept the Excel name. Anything else that they bought or purchased after that were absorbed into those 2 factions. So I think, Eagle Elevator is now Excel Elevator. Brandywine, I think, is the same Excel. So that's their thing. To keep it like the OEMs, where when we buy you, you're coming over to us, all one union, so to speak, different branches of the union, but 1 logo, 1 phone number, 1 operation system, a united work front. So that's their approach to the industry. There's pros and cons with it, but they're a big player. The second big player is Arcline. So Arcline bought, or their main parent company is the American Elevator Group. And the American Elevator Group, instead of doing the IUC approach, went on the opposite spectrum and purchased all non-union small shops and Local 3 shops, because Local 3 was, is the only union in New York. Well, Local 3 is just a New York area union for elevator guys. So they purchased the Local 3 shops and non-union shops, and that's their business model, so to speak. They're staying away from the IUC market because that's covered by the other private equity company, and this equity company is buying, like I said, non-union and local 3 shops up and down the border. I think they announced that they're the largest at about 18,000 cars, give or take, and they're growing as well. Their business model is a little different. Their business model comes from the CEO, who also did the merger with GAL, the Vantage Group, and kept all those companies individual. GAL's one, Curion's another, Bortec. They keep all those companies individual underneath the Vantage name. So the American Elevator Group approach is pretty much similar to that approach, where we'll keep all these individual companies, all their name, their secret sauce, so to speak, whatever they do, and they'll be underneath the American Elevator brands, but separate, all independent. And that's their business model with that. There's pros and cons to that. Is what it is. A third big player that seems to be, an independent. It has the face of an independent company is Champion Elevator. But Champion Elevator, at the end of the day, is backed up by private equity as well, Credit Suisse or something like that. I'm not really sure, and please don't take what I say as facts. But they are backed up by a private equity company, and underneath that private equity company, Champion Elevator has been able to buy multiple companies, mostly IUEC companies, union shops in the New York, Connecticut, Philly area. I don't know if they jumped down to Florida yet, but it's only a matter of time. Most people do. So they're another big player. They're keeping it very, very clean, just like, or similar to Excel 3-phase, but more like a Thyssen Otis Kone, where it's one name, it's Champion Elevator. You're coming aboard, you sign with us, you're Champion. They're all the same union. They're all, like I said, same workforce, same uniform, same logo, same advertising, all one family. I don't want to jump around, but their approach, I respect their approach. One big aspect of their approach I really respect is the fact that when they buy a company, they have a dedicated team to go introduce themselves to those clients from that company. Say, hey, I'm with Champion Elevator. I'm gonna be the area manager, whatever the title is. Anything I can do to help, any problems you had in the past, any problems you have in the future, please call me. And they establish that relationship. Oh, you had Joe the mechanic here, you like Joe? Joe brings you coffee every month. All right, well, Joe's been doing good. I don't see a reason to change Joe. Joe's still gonna be here. And any other problems? That goes a long way. And I think that's very, very smart with what they're doing with that. So let me just jump around to the other two. So I said positive thing with that. Another positive thing before I jump on to the other two is, it's an elevator company. Even though they're backed by private equity and have to answer to them, and at the end of the day, it's an elevator company running an elevator company as they buy them. And then that goes a long way, and that's why I think they're not as big as the other two, but they're going very fast in acquisitions, and they're kind of smart. They know to fix whatever problems before they go to the next level. Champion, I hold in a lot of respect. They do a lot of charities. They're always out there advertising. Champion seems to be a solid outfit one way or another. All right, back over to the other two. American Elevator Group. What do I like about them? Well, I like the fact that they keep, the companies that they buy independent, to let those companies run independently. They give them the resources to do what they need to do, and they'll help in and support any way they can. So I gotta give my hats off to that. I think that's a great line. Do I think it will work in the long haul of things? Can you keep everything separate? I don't know. Do I think that maybe it might be better, instead of some of the companies competing within the group, to kind of merge? Yeah, but I do like, it is a nice fact that they're keeping, this mom and pop shop that and love and been using for years, pretty much the same. And if that stays like that, then I think that's great. So that's a positive with them. biggest negative is, once again, you're really being organized or operated by private equity, which, whether they have a little bit of hands-on or a lot of hands-on, I still believe that some of the people that they're operations people or people that are in charge of every day of running these companies is from, I think, could be set up differently, so to speak. And let's jump over to three-phase. Three-phase in Excel. I think it's a little too confusing that they have the two markets from Boston, another one, especially since, and I hate to pick on anyone, but those two companies didn't really have the greatest reputation of other companies that they purchased, in my opinion. I could be wrong. I probably am wrong. But I think there was other companies that they bought that had better name and reputation that they could have went with and backed. And similar thing where I'm going to discuss as a whole, so you got those three. Let me go back a little bit. So you still have Schindler out there buying companies, and you still have other people growing. The one company that I see that's continually growing, that was the largest independent up until recently, I think they're trying to get back the title, was Nouveau. Always give my hats up to Nouveau. They were a top tier company where I work for Nouveau, and I have to tell you that I did work for Nouveau. I mean, their motto was get the elevator running at any cost. Yeah, you may pay a premium, but it's like paying for Verizon or AT&T. You're going to get top tier service out of Verizon, so you're going to pay for it. But Nouveau always seemed to deliver, always had stocked motorhomes, always was focused on the company of getting that elevator working at the end of the day. And I love, and my hats are off that business model. But they seem to, restructure a bit, from my understanding. I haven't been with them in several years, but I think they took a look at their books, or they had very, very smart people there. Got rid of some of the crappier clients. Maybe they went from, 15,000 down to 10,000 in the New York area, cleaned up the stuff, and then reinvested their money into other markets. I know they're kicking butt down in Florida, Chicago, and Texas. I see a lot that they're going at. So maybe with those companies now, they picked up a bunch more cars, and maybe they are, right around the biggest independent. But that's another way of doing things. There's no private equity involved in that. That's a family of 3 or 4 or 5, who knows how many, kids now and other kids, but a family of owners that have turned down every other company that tried to buy them, and has been smart about their money, smart about business, and is just progressively growing and now taking over markets outside of New York City. So my hats are off to them. So let me go back. So we have all these things, and my biggest concern is, as opposed to an elevator company buying an elevator company, you have private equity buying an elevator company, and when they put people to run their company, I don't know that they're picking people that have the best intentions, or their focuses are on building the companies. Meaning, if I just bought your elevator company and I paid you $10 million, and you're only going to be with them a year or so, but since you're the first company or second company that I bought, and you're the president, well, now I want you to be on my team to guide me and run me through the operations of these other companies and acquisitions. Well, this guy got his money. He's a millionaire. His focus isn't being there or working, 10-hour days or whatever's involved in growing the business. He's out. He's done. He's over. He's going to put in whatever his contract says, a year, 2 years, 3 years. He's out the door. So that's one mistake I see with some of these acquisitions. Another mistake is, after all those high-dollar workforce people were out the door, well, what's left? You have, and not to discredit, but you have a bunch of salespeople in the office now. And salespeople can sell themselves, and they're selling themselves as operations people. and they've done this and they've done that, when really their background has always been sales. And a elevator salesperson is not an elevator person that knows operations and knows the people and know how to build the company. And I see that a lot, where after the hired people leave, the salespeople left in office. So who does private equity look to? These people, and they put them in a place of power where it just creates turmoil throughout the company. So that's another mistake I see with some of these acquisitions. But the biggest thing that I see, I have to go back to, is these are private equity companies buying elevator companies. At the end of the day, it's a business. They want a return on their money. So what happens 5 years from now? Whether they absorbed you into another company or did this, they want a return. If they don't have a return, or even if they do have a return, they're always looking for someone to buy and sell the company that they own. So that kind of scares me. That's, my job security. Why would I work for a company that's going to look to flip in 5 years to someone else, and then I don't know if my job's secure? Why am I going to come to work every day and give 120% to something that might not be around in 5 years, or I might not be around in 5 years? So I see that as another negative. Now, on the other side of things, if this is a private equity or investment firm or whatever that wants to hold on to a company, wants to develop it, it's in there for the long haul for 10, 20 years, is going to put the money into it to build and give these, the resources to grow, I'm all for that. That's great. So that's my opinion on overall of some of these private equity companies and non-private equity companies. I just want to tag on to some last couple of points that I've seen or heard about that are causing some problems after a company is bought, that I just want to put out there on someone's radar. But here are some mistakes that I see right off the bat. Okay, the first one. So John wants to buy Bob's elevator. Okay, Bob has his 500 car elevator company, wherever, New Jersey. He's been around for 20 years. A lot of his people have been around for 20 years, 10 years, whatever. He has loyal customers, loyal employees. He's been doing good. They have a barbecue every summer. They have a Christmas party. They have all these little functions that keep the team going as a team. Okay. So I go to Bob and say, I want to buy your company. Sign this non-disclosure agreement. You can't tell anyone about this acquisition, and same for the buyer. He can't tell anything that's going on. No one knows what's going on. No problem. So even though these employees are seeing this other company come in and look through the books and go, check everything out and ask questions, when these loyal employees go to the owner and say, hey, what's going on? Are you thinking of selling? Well, now the owner has a non-disclosure agreement, so he has to lie to him and say, no, I'm not going to sell. What are you, nuts? No, never. Don't worry about it. We're all fine. Mistake number one. It's a mistake because you're lying to people that respect you and been with you for over 20 years. Now, I get the legal aspect of it. It's a big mistake. Mistake number two. People start reading in a magazine. It's put out there, the notice of acquisition, that your company was just bought and it was acquired by so-and-so, and you have the president's statement of, this is a great thing. We're going to merge forces. It's going to all work out wonderful. It's a great day for us. They're going to develop our talent and bring us to the next level. All that fun stuff. Why is this a mistake? Well, it's a mistake because your employees were sideswiped by it, and you didn't let them know it was happening, and they had to wait until they read it on the internet or got an internet alert that your company was acquired. Another smack in their face. The third biggest smack is, after they read this article and see what's going on, the owner sits them down and says, guys, I understand your frustration, but here's the deal. Now, out of ego or out of pride or out of whatever, every single owner seems to take the stance of, I didn't sell my whole company. I would never do that. They basically say, we're merging forces. I'm just going to merge with them. They're gonna pay to bring in better resources and better cars. You're all going to get new company cars or bonuses or whatever I put. It's going to be a great thing. We're just merging. But no, I didn't sell. It's like number 3. Now, with these 3 little lies, they just canceled 20 years, 25 years of working with you in whatever respect that you had. Out the window, just by your lying. They can no longer trust you. Now they're in the mode of they have to fight for themselves, fend for themselves, and figure out what their future is. Big mistake. Seems like every single company walks those lines of how how it happens. 4th mistake. You're still carrying the line that you weren't totally bought, that you were merged. But yet, week number 1, week number 2, all of a sudden they're seeing these corporate people come in and asking about their books, asking about financials, asking about the operations of the company, asking all these questions, and your workforce is like, what do I do? They're trying to be loyal to you as an owner and not tell these people everything because they feel like, they don't own it because they were told they're just merging with us. They're just helping us out. I still own this. This is still my thing. Huge mistake. Because when they do find out at the end of the day that they are no longer owned or you're no longer the boss, they're done. You just lost your 3 or 4 strikes. They're done. So not only when these people come in and it's not explained to them what they're doing or how they're helping, or they're going to put different systems in place to organize things that they can see what's going on in your company and reward you for those things. There's definitely ways to structure this, but that statement never came up. That honesty was never there. So now when these people come in, not only do I see these office workers try to fend for themselves, they're not only not going to help you, they're going to give you limited information. They're going to go out of their way to make your job harder in seeing what's going on. And then the biggest aspect, they're going to start throwing people underneath the bus. It turns into survival island, where I've been doing this for 20 years. I'm the best. Joe Schmo over there, he sleeps all day, or he leaves at 2 o'clock. They always put other employees down, and it becomes it becomes a toxic environment. No one goes in first day as a human, relates to me human, say, look, I know these are difficult changes. Here's what's going to be better. Here's going to be, and guides them. It doesn't happen. So these are shocks to the system. So after that, this goes on for months now, where the management is fighting with the new or the owners, basically their owners team, and they're always going to put their foot down of, well, I've been doing it this way for 20 years and we've been fine. I don't care about your new way. And they're going to fight them until the end. And it just makes the whole situation worse to where it kind of rolls downhill to the employees, the field employees, where those guys now, no longer do that 110% that they're doing for you before. Meaning if there's a call at 3 o'clock, well, they're walking around, well, send the night guy. It's not my problem. And they're only going to do the limited amount of work, if that, for you, because they're waiting for the other ball to drop, the other shoe to drop, so to speak. So that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see time and time again when an elevator company gets bought or absorbed by private equity, or not even elevator companies. If it's not done right, like I said, I'm very proud champion for doing it a different way and seeing that. But for the most part, every elevator company that I've spoken to that have been bought, it's the same line of stuff. And it turns into, fast forward 6 months from the acquisition, you got everyone from the office to the field quiet, walking around like zombies. The morale is non-existent. almost to the point where you can't turn that ship around unless you restructure. So whatever you were trying to, your plan was to keep this independent, well, that's all destroyed, if that was your plan. Where you're forced now to merge, and out of 500 cars, you may be able to retain 300 cars. 50 employees, you may have 10. I mean, I've seen it too many times, and it needs to. That's the biggest focus, that or advice that I give someone from private equity or someone buying an elevator company, is to really, when you buy a company, there's certain ways to approach it, certain ways to get involved with it, certain ways to run it. Ultimately, you can run it, it's your company, but there's a certain approach if your goal is to retain the workforce, retain all your clients. There really is. And some people know how to do that, some people don't. Mostly it comes down to common sense. Common sense and being human, and really being honest with the employees every step of the way, not trying to hide anything. Because as soon as you tell them one lie, it's done. So, with that said, that's the damage that I'm seeing and concerned about. Where, like I said, I mean to repeat myself, if it's done right, and my advice to whoever's buying these companies or whoever's in charge, you get your one company running first. You get your morale up, you keep it up, get it working, flowing great, develop your rhythm. You know, it shouldn't take more than 6 months, maybe a year, but that's something that you need to invest. And then you go into your next company and do the same thing there, and then you go into your next company. It should never be that you're announcing, in my opinion, I mean, what do I know? But it should never be that every other week you're announcing that you bought another company. Well, why? Because it's impossible for you to develop the relationship on a human level with these employees from this company, and getting that company running first, and then this company, and this company, and this company. It's just too much. And when you're fast forward 2 years from now, or a year from now, and your investment firm's looking at the books and they're saying, why is this company not making money, and this company's not making money, and you got to answer for it? Well, there's reasons, and this is the reason. It's not anything else. It's nothing magic. Even to back up, I know that it's some investment firm's plan where they know they're going to lose X amount of cars. They know they're going to lose this, and they buy another company to reestablish their car count or whatever, and they keep on replenishing it when they lose it. Look, I'm not a mathematician. I'm sure these finance people know better than me. I'm sure you're making money at the end of the day, but I can guarantee you, if you go by, the common sense plan of, let's keep this company, let's fix what's wrong with this company, get it running great, and where you're not losing cars, and then you go to the next one, well, you're going to make more money in the long haul. I mean, that's just common sense math. You're going to have happier employees, happier clients, your reputation is going to grow. So not only are you going to grow by acquisitions, you're going to grow by reputation, you're going to grow by your employees. It's just going to, good becomes good, bad becomes bad. You lie to your employees and tell them that this way it's happening, it's going to go down. You're truthful with them, you work with them, and you're honest with them, and you work as partners, as human beings on a human level, you'll be great. You're going to excel. Another thing is, some of these companies that you have bought, I don't think are looked into deep enough. Were they struggling beforehand? The last 5 years, have they grown? Did they take a step back financially? Outside of the money, I like to see the last 10 years of a company. Only thing I want to look at is how many cars, how many employees, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year. If you're at that 10 year, whatever year mark in the last 5 years, you haven't grown, there's a problem. There's a big problem, and you got to fix it. Whether it's operational wise, there's a problem. I see a lot of companies that the last 5 years, whatever, will hover around 1,000 units or 1,100 units or 1,200 units. And they have this great sales force, and they're picking up 100 cars a year, 200 cars a year. But at the end of the year, they're always back to the original car count of 1,100 or 1,200 cars. well, that means you just lost 200 cars or 100 cars that year. So you're putting in all this money in for your sales force, but you're not growing. Well, that's the biggest concern. Why aren't you growing? What are you doing wrong as a company that's messing up? And you really need to take a look in the mirror and figure out what that is. A lot of people blame it, oh, we hit our plateau, it's all bullshit. If you're not growing progressively each year in some sort of increment, there's something wrong with your company. You got to dig deep. You got to put in your big boy, big girl's pants on and see, is it my operations? Is my morale good? Is it this? And usually the people on the ground know. I mean, it's not a mystery. You could probably ask a helper and you hear the gossip of why this is happening or that's happening. And you really got to know what your company's doing, because it is a problem. There should never be a company that plateaus at 1,000 units or two. There's always the next step. You always need to be growing to the next step, and that's a good run company. Other reasons why companies sell quickly that I've noticed is, look, I'm not stupid. Insurance is through the roof. And that's a huge expense every month that comes. So you got huge insurance bills, you got huge overhead with union employees, and you're just struggling along. Maybe you're at that 3%, maybe you're at 0% profit. But there's ways to streamline things without raising your rates to the roof. Anytime you see a company that's announcing an increase, a price increase, another price or labor, and desperate and for you to go back and bill, there's something wrong. I mean, you should not be billing a team at ludicrous rates of $550 to $600 for a team and not be making money. I mean, if you're doing that and you're still not making money, you got issues. What are your issues? Figure it out. Are your guys working efficiently? Do you have a lot of repeat calls that you're wasting money on? I mean, then I shouldn't get into this. A lot of you guys know you're in elevator. You know what's wrong. You know what should be fixed. So, anyway, that's just my thoughts on it. And please comment below. We'll go over, review it. But the pros, I see the elevator industry changing. I don't know if it's for the better. I don't know if it's for the worse. It's just different at this point. It's something new that's been happening the last 10 years. And I guess the writing's on the wall. We'll see. I do see a lot of problems with how these acquisitions are handled, and I see a lot of potential. Let me know what you think below, and we'll go from there. Thanks for listening. As you can see, I'm in my driveway now, so we'll talk another day.